Welcome back to the Anti-Cancer Lab. If you're new here, pull up a chair, you're in good company. This is where I read the cancer studies most people never see and tell you, plainly, what they mean for your plate. No fear, no hype. So grab a coffee and let's look at this together. And honestly, hold on to that cup, because the cup in your hand is the entire video today. Today we separate the real evidence from the hype, because there is a coffee trick going around that supposedly slows cancer cells, and part of it is genuinely true, part of it is wildly oversold, and the true part costs you nothing and takes about 4 minutes. Stay with me, because the honest version of this story is better than the clickbait version, and I almost never get to say that. Quick note before we go a step further, and I say this on every video on this channel because here it matters more than anywhere else. I'm Dr. Becker. I'm a researcher, not your doctor, and I have never had cancer and never treated a single patient. Everything I'm about to walk you through is me reading published studies and translating them for general education. None of it is medical advice. None of it replaces your oncologist, your treatment, or anything the people caring for you have told you. No drink in your kitchen is a cure. If you're in treatment right now, every word here goes alongside your medical team, never instead of them. If anyone has told you to limit your caffeine, listen to them and not to me. Alright, coffee in hand? Good, let's get into it. There's a version of this you hear online, and a version the lab actually documented. They're not the same. And I want to start there honestly, because the online version is loud and it's mostly wrong. And the documented version is quiet and it's mostly right. And you deserve the quiet one. The loud version goes something like this. Coffee is packed with a powerful antioxidant. That antioxidant makes cancer cells die 1,000 times faster. So drink coffee and you start the tumor. Now here's my honest read before I touch a single study. There is a real compound. There is real lab work. There is even real population data that points in a hopeful direction. But the way it's been bolted together into a miracle is not how any of it actually works. And the most important part of the trick, the part that genuinely lowers a real risk, has almost nothing to do with the antioxidant at all. It has to do with temperature. So let me take it apart piece by piece, because once you see how the pieces fit, you'll know exactly what to do with your cup tomorrow morning, and you'll know it for free. Let me tell you about the compound first, because it's real and it's worth knowing the name. Coffee's main polyphenol is called chlorogenic acid. Polyphenol, that's just a plant compound. The family of compounds in colorful plant foods that mop up some of the cellular damage your body takes on every day. And chlorogenic acid is coffee's headline one. It's coffee's main antioxidant compound, the thing that gives a fresh cup a lot of its character. So when a headline says coffee is loaded with antioxidants, that's mostly the chlorogenic acid it's talking about. And that part is true. A cup of coffee genuinely is one of the bigger sources of these plant compounds in a typical Western diet. Partly because, let's be honest, a lot of folks aren't eating a rainbow of vegetables, but they are drinking 2 or 3 cups of coffee a day. So for a lot of people, coffee is quietly doing some antioxidant heavy lifting, whether they planned it or not. Here's my honest read of what that compound actually does, and where the line is. In laboratory studies, the Petri dish kind, chlorogenic acid shows real antioxidant activity, and it interferes with some of the growth signals that cancer cells use to keep dividing. That's a real, repeatable, published observation, and I won't take it away from you. But I have to plant a flag right next to it, because the flag is the whole point of this channel. That's cells in a dish. Wait, let me say that more carefully because the distinction is everything. When researchers drip chlorogenic acid onto cancer cells in a laboratory dish, and the cells slow down or die, that earns the compound a place in the queue for more study. It does not mean that drinking your morning coffee does that inside your body. The concentration they use in the dish is something you could never reach by drinking coffee. Not if you drank it all day. And your liver and your gut break these compounds down and pass most of them along long before they'd ever pool around a cell at dish strength. So the dish is a clue. The dish is not your kitchen. Which brings me to the part of the evidence I actually trust more, the population data, because it's measured in people. There's a long line of what we call observational studies. Observational, that just means researchers watch big groups of people over many years and look for patterns, which shows you patterns, never causes. And across a lot of those studies, in a lot of countries, People who drink more coffee tend to show lower rates of certain cancers. The most consistent signal, the one that shows up again and again, is liver cancer. Higher coffee intake, lower rates of liver cancer, study after study. There's also some signal for colorectal cancer, that's cancer of the colon and rectum, and some for endometrial cancer, the lining of the uterus. Now, I have to be careful here the way I'm always careful, and I'd be letting you down if I weren't. Observational work shows an association, a pattern, not proof of cause. Coffee drinkers might be different in a dozen other ways. They might move more, drink less, see a doctor more often, who knows? You can't pull one thread out of a whole life and call it the cause. But the liver signal in particular is consistent enough across enough populations that researchers take it seriously and keep coming back to it. So that's the honest shape of the benefit. Real compound, real lab activity, and a real, hopeful population pattern, strongest for the liver, that points the right way without ever being a promise. And here's a detail in that population data I find genuinely reassuring, because it tells you the benefit probably isn't just a caffeine buzz. In a lot of those studies, when researchers separate out the people drinking decaf, the decaffeinated coffee, that liver signal often holds up too. Now, let me say that more carefully, because I don't want to overstate it. The data on decaf is thinner than the data on regular coffee, simply because fewer people drink it, so I hold it more loosely. But the fact that the hopeful pattern doesn't vanish the moment you take the caffeine out is a quiet little clue that what's helping is more likely the coffee compounds themselves, the chlorogenic acid and its cousins, and not the caffeine jolt. Which matters practically, because it means if caffeine and you don't get along, if it wrecks your sleep or makes your heart race, a good decaf may well keep most of the part that's actually doing the work. That's a real, useful option, and almost nobody frames it that way. Now, here's where it gets practical, and here's the actual trick, the part that genuinely lowers a documented risk. And it surprised me how few people know it. Stay with me, because this is the heart of it. It is not about adding anything, it's about temperature. In 2016, the World Health Organization's Cancer Research Agency, that's a group called IARC, the IARC, sat down and reviewed all the evidence on hot drinks and cancer. And they reached two conclusions that, side by side, tell the whole story. The first conclusion: drinking beverages that are very hot, above about 65 degrees Celsius, which is roughly 149 degrees Fahrenheit, scalding hot, is probably carcinogenic to the esophagus. The esophagus, that's your food pipe, the tube that carries what you swallow down to your stomach. The signal for that came largely from parts of the world where people drink their tea scalding hot straight off the boil. There was a large study following people in northern Iran, for instance, where drinking very hot tea was linked to higher rates of esophageal cancer. The thinking is mechanical and honestly intuitive. Scalding liquid, day after day, year after year, irritates and injures the delicate lining of that food pipe, and tissue that's constantly being burned and constantly having to repair itself is tissue where things are more likely to eventually go wrong. And here's the second conclusion IARC reached, in the very same review. And this is the part that flips the whole online story on its head. They concluded that coffee itself is not classifiable as causing cancer. They actually removed an older, more cautious label that had been hanging on coffee for years. So read those two findings together and let it land. It was never the coffee, it was the heat. The danger that real research could actually pin down wasn't the bean, wasn't the caffeine, wasn't the chlorogenic acid. It was the temperature of the liquid scalding the food pipe on the way down. Which means the single most evidence-backed thing you can do with your coffee, for your cancer risk, is almost laughably simple. Let it cool down. Let it go from scalding to comfortably warm before you drink it. I know what some of you are thinking. You're thinking, so is coffee good or bad, Becker? Just tell me. Fair. That's a completely fair thing to want. And here's the straight answer. The coffee is fine, leaning helpful. The scalding temperature is the only real coffee-related cancer risk research has actually nailed down. And it's the one thing fully in your hands. So the trick isn't drink more coffee, and it certainly isn't some 1,000 times faster miracle. The trick is, drink the coffee you already drink, but stop drinking it at a temperature that burns. Let me put that on the plate or in the cup exactly. Here's what I actually do most mornings now. I pour the coffee and I just walk away from it for 4 or 5 minutes. I make my eggs, I let the dog out, I read the headline. By the time I come back, it's gone from steaming to warm. It's at a temperature where the first sip is pleasant instead of a tongue scald. And that's the cup that's doing me no harm. If you're impatient, a splash of cool water or a little milk drops the temperature instantly. There's no gadget to buy, nothing to order, nothing to remember. You're already letting most cups cool a bit anyway. This is just doing it on purpose, every time, and never gulping it, scalding straight off the pot. And let me give you the practical landmark, because wait until it's cooled is vague, and I don't like vague. You don't need a thermometer, though if you're the kind of person who likes a number, a cheap kitchen thermometer reading under about 140 Fahrenheit is your green light. But here's the no-gadget version I actually use. The danger zone is roughly the temperature of fresh off the boil. The safe zone is the temperature of a warm bath you'd happily sit in. So the simplest test in the world. If the steam coming off the cup is still rising in a thick visible plume, it's too hot. Leave it. When that heavy steam has settled down to almost nothing, when you can hold the mug comfortably in your bare palm without wanting to put it down, when the first sip is something you'd describe as warm and not hot, that's your cup. For most mugs in a normal kitchen, that's about 4 to 5 minutes of sitting. That's it. Watch the steam, feel the mal, and never let that first sip make you wince. Vern, who you'll hear about in a minute, used to wince at every first sip and call it a good cup. That wince was the whole problem. Let me build on that with the other half of the trick. Because the trick is really two simple moves, and this one's about what you're putting in the cup. Drink it black, or close to black. Here's the honest reasoning, and it's not me being a coffee purist. The plant compound benefit, the chlorogenic acid, the antioxidant character, the thing the population data is loosely pointing at, all of that lives in the coffee itself. None of it lives in the 3 teaspoons of sugar, or the flavored syrup pump, or the sweetened creamer. And when you load a cup of coffee with sugar, day after day, you are working directly against yourself. Because excess sugar and the spare weight it tends to bring along over the years are tied, in solid research, to higher rates of several cancers, through routes like chronic inflammation and insulin signaling. So I'll tell you what I'd actually put in my own cup, since I promised you my honest practice. Black, most days. A splash of milk if I want it softer, and that's genuinely fine. What I've quietly let go of over the years is the sugar, and I'm not going to lecture you about it, because I know that for a lot of folks, the sweet cup is a small daily comfort and life is short. But if you're drinking coffee partly because you've heard it's good for you, then drowning it in sugar is quietly canceling the reason you started. Black, or near black, lets the good part be the whole point of the cup. Now let me deal with that 1,000 times faster number head on, because somebody watching has seen it and is wondering why I haven't repeated it. And here's the part the headlines leave out. You'll see claims online that a coffee compound makes cancer cells die 1,000 times faster, or some number like it. Let me tell you honestly where a number like that comes from. It comes from Petri dish cell kinetics. That's laboratory measurements of how fast cells grow or die in a dish, at compound concentrations you simply cannot reach by drinking coffee. In a dish, a researcher controls everything. They can flood those cells with a concentration of a pure compound dozens or hundreds of times higher than anything that would ever circulate in your blood from a cup of coffee. So yes, in that controlled dish, at that dose, you can measure a dramatic effect and get a dramatic sounding number. But that number is not something happening in your body. And turning it into a body claim is exactly the sleight of hand I started this video warning you about. Now, here's why I bother explaining it instead of just rolling my eyes. Understanding where that number comes from is the difference between being a person who gets sold things and a person who can't be. Once you know X times faster almost always means in a dish at a dose I'll never reach, you are immune to a whole genre of nonsense. And that's worth more to me than any single food fact. I sat with a man last winter, a retired fellow, call him Vernon, Vern to his friends. And Vern was a coffee man down to his bones. 6 cups a day, the same chipped mug for 30 years. And here's the thing about Vern, he drank it scalding. Straight off the pot, steam still coming off it. That first sip you could see him wince at, and he loved it that way. He told me his father drank it like that, his grandfather drank it like that. It was a family thing, the hotter the better. And Vern had read somewhere that his coffee habit was protecting him from cancer, and he was proud of it. And he asked me, half bragging, if he was doing it right. And I had to gently turn it around for him, because the truth was almost the exact opposite of what he believed. I told him, Vern, the coffee, that part's probably fine, even helpful. But the scalding, every single cup, 6 times a day, 30 years, that's the one part research actually flags, and not for the good. You can keep your 6 cups. You can keep the cheap mug. Just let it sit 2 minutes first. Let it stop steaming. And I watch it land on him. This idea that the cheapest possible change, just waiting a couple of minutes, was the actual protective move, not the thing he'd been bragging about. He went quiet, and then he laughed, and he said, "You're telling me I've been doing the one wrong thing and the one right thing at the same time." And that's exactly it. That's most of nutrition, honestly. The cup was fine. The temperature was the lever. Last I heard, Vern lets it cool now. Same mug, same 6 cups, and he says it tastes better anyway, which it does. Let me give you one more honest layer before I send you off, because I get asked to show my homework, and you're right to ask. A couple of fair caveats, the kind a friend tells you and a salesman never would. First, caffeine. Coffee is not for everyone, and it isn't free of trade-offs. Caffeine can wreck your sleep, and sleep is not a small thing for cancer risk or for anything else as we get older. So if you're past a certain age, and most of us watching are, I'd cut the coffee off by early afternoon and let the evening be decaf or nothing. So the cup that's supposed to help you isn't quietly stealing your sleep. Second, and this is one almost nobody mentions, how you brew matters for a different reason. Coffee that's unfiltered or boiled, that's your French press, your espresso, your old boiled cowboy coffee, carries natural oils. One of them is called caffeine, an oil in unfiltered coffee, and caffeine can nudge your cholesterol up over time. A paper filter, the plain paper kind in a drip machine, catches most of those oils. I'm not telling you to throw out your French press. I love a French press. I'm telling you that if your cholesterol is something you and your doctor are watching, the paper filter cup is the gentler one, and that's just a fair thing to know. And third, the one that matters most. None of this, not a word of it, is for someone whose oncologist has told them to limit caffeine. If that's you, your team's instruction beats my video every time, alongside your care, never instead of it. And let me be straight with you, because we've reached the place where I have to be. None of this is a cure. Letting your coffee cool does not kill cancer in your body the way a headline says, and drinking it black does not undo a tumor. What the honest evidence actually says is smaller and steadier than that, and I'd stake my name on the smaller version. Coffee carries a real plant compound, chlorogenic acid, with genuine antioxidant activity in the lab. The population data leans hopeful, strongest for liver cancer, but it's an association, never proof. And the one thing research could actually pin down, the one real coffee-related cancer risk, was never the coffee at all. It was drinking it scalding hot. And that's the one thing that's completely in your hands and costs you nothing to fix. That's the whole honest claim. It shifts the odds a little, maybe, over years, and the temperature part shifts a real risk that you can simply stop taking starting tomorrow. Anyone who promises you more than that, who tells you coffee melts tumors 1,000 times faster, is selling something, and it isn't the truth. So here's your one thing this week, and it is genuinely just one small change, and it's free. Starting tomorrow morning, don't drink your coffee scalding. Pour it and give it 4 or 5 minutes. Go do one thing, the eggs, the dog, the paper, and come back to it warm instead of steaming, so the first sip is pleasant and not a burn. If you're in a hurry, a splash of cool water or milk drops it right away. That's the assignment. Let it cool. And if you want the bonus move, ease off the sugar so the good part of the cup is the whole point of the cup, black or near black. You don't have to change your coffee, your brand, your mug, or how many cups you drink. You just stop drinking it at a temperature that burns, and you let the plant compounds be the reason you drink it. That's the step I took myself. And the only thing it cost me was about 4 minutes I was wasting anyway. Let me leave you with this, and I mean it calmly, not as a slogan. You hold one lever every single day, 3 times a day, and it's your plate. And this morning, it's your cup. That's not nothing. You can control your genes. You can control everything that happens in your body. And I would never stand here and tell you a cup of coffee puts you in charge of cancer, because it doesn't. But you can control how hot it is when it goes down. And you can control whether it's drowning in sugar. And you can do those small, free, sensible things consistently, for years. That's the whole game. Be the safe driver. Do the doable thing. Bring it to the people caring for you, and let them do the rest. Your last decades can be good ones, and a warm, unhurried cup of black coffee, sitting 2 minutes before you touch it, is a fine place to start that work. Keep it simple, keep it on your plate, and I'll see you right back here. Bring a friend who needs this, and tell me in the comments how you take your coffee, and whether you're a scalding hot person like Vern was. I read every single one of these.